The question I got, and ask a foster parent anything, is what about adopting kids who are already foster kids and teenagers out of foster care system? What can you expect, and what kind of resources and help you might be able to expect afterwards? Well, this is a very good question, because I don't think that many people realize that in this country, in the United States, there's a big move to adopt kids out of the foster care system. And we are now calling foster care parents foster adopt parents or resource families. And the intent with the foster adopt is to perhaps place a kid in that home with the intention of adopting that child later down the road if things don't work out well with their families. Well, and that in itself, that's controversial, because part of the issue here is that when kids are placed in foster adoptive homes, it's really hard for those parents to get those kids back, because now those foster parents have become very attached to those kids. And for a social worker, it's just easy, cut and dry. Okay, the birth parents are not doing the things that they need to do, although they may be doing it. It just won't be in the court report that way. And let's just adopt this kid out, because now that county or that family foster agency is now going to get money from the federal government for placing that kid into adoptions. Public policy is money driven. But I myself have adopted 5 kids out of the foster care system many years ago. And in fact, I adopted teens out of the foster care system when it was not very popular to do so. And they were multi-ethnic. Now, I'm not saying this to give myself kudos, because seriously, I struggled in that process. And I don't know how to say all this in a way that would keep this videotape short and sweet so that you can watch it. But there are pros and cons and controversy to adopting kids out of the foster care system, which is why some people go international to do it. Because that's another issue, and that's another question. Why are people going international to adopt? Well, that in itself has its controversies and pros and cons. And I don't think that a video blog is enough time to answer all those questions. Let me try to rush through some issues. Some people believe that adopting kids out of the foster care system is a good thing, because you know what you're getting to. You've got the kid in your home. He knows you. You know him. You are somewhat compatible if you're interested in doing the adoption, and that's a good thing. So you know what you're getting into, okay? And your counties should be telling you about adoption assistance payments, meaning that you will get some help for at-risk and hard-to-place kids who are adopted out of the system. Now, when you sign that contract for adoption assistance payments, be sure to hold your county to it. They're not very good about after adoption services. That's in itself another controversy, and they can't convince me of that, because I lived that experience. Everything I tell you is my experience. I lived it, and so it's not with the glossy. Make sure you get everything up front in writing. The AAP, the adoption system payments, as a form you will sign, and it is indeed a contract. The other controversy is that if you're adopting teens, you're basically adopting them out of services. There are certain things, for instance, the independent living program or aftercare services. They're called different things in different parts of the country. But the bottom line is that Chafee grant services provide independent living program services. And when you adopt a teenager, what is supposed to happen is if you adopt that teenager after that teenager has become eligible for independent living program services, he or she will get those services after you have adopted them and they turn 18. Well, that will be a battle, I assure you. At least that was a battle for me here in Los Angeles County. They can't convince me that that program works. The other thing is federal grants, Pell grants, those kinds of things that would normally be easier for wards of the court at age 18 for kids who go on to college, although many kids in foster care do not go on to college. These programs are not as easy to get for kids you've adopted out of foster care. So there are people who say when you adopt kids out of foster care, you're adopting them out of services. Now, a part of you may want that kid to have your last name or forever family. Well, you can have a forever family by going other routes like guardianship or just having that kid stay in foster care. And nobody likes the idea of long-range foster care anymore because we just totally blew it. But some kids are okay with staying in a foster home way after they've turned 18. My phone's going to ring a lot. At some point I should get smart enough to turn it off. It rings constantly, nonstop. So what can you expect? What kind of behaviors can you expect after a kid is adopted out of foster care? Well, you can expect the same behaviors they had when they were in foster care. Okay? Especially for teenagers, because they just don't get any better. I would say that some youth who are small, who have certain kinds of problems, that they will outgrow those problems, but chances are they will not. Chances are they're going to always be somewhat of a struggle for you. And I like to say that I have some miracles here, but at the same time, helping those kids move on in their lives as adults still is an issue, and it still is a problem, despite the fact that you might have fixed some of the problems. And the problems that you might have fixed for some kids, just like in foster care, adopted kids want to go home at 18. They want to know who their birth parents are. They want to be made whole. So if the opportunity for them to go home at the age of 18, that is exactly what they're going to do. Which brings us to open adoptions. I think that at certain ages, and you're just not going, those kids will never be yours. And so for kids who heal, and it's certainly been my experience, kids who heal are the ones who you've adopted because you've gotten rid of all the nonsense of social services and social workers who each bring a bit of their own baggage to every case they have. I think there are some social workers who are smart enough not to do so, but I can tell you there are many social workers who will bring their baggage to their jobs. And so when you adopt a kid, you don't have that problem anymore. And you don't have the problems of investigations and people who just don't like you, who make allegations. So I think adoptions do bring some stability, but you'll find that most of the instability that foster homes have are generally coming from the agencies themselves. I think the most important thing that we can do, adoption aside, foster care aside, and if we focus on stability, I think stability is really the issue here. So can you have a stable home in foster care? Yes, you can. One of the things that you need to look at is that when your home becomes somewhat stable with the kids you have, leave it alone. And if you have a need to bring in more kids who are going to bring in more baggage, there are ways to make that happen. You can sit all your kids down and you can have them interview the new kid that's coming into the home if they're old enough to do so. You really have to look very hard in terms of who's coming into the house. I think the bottom line is we want to have stability. And you want to maintain that stability in your core values no matter how many people are pushing you in other directions. You just got to push back and hold on to the stableness of what you have. Until our politicians get around to giving those adopted kids the services that foster kids would normally receive, I think adoptions is probably not always the right way to go. It will be a struggle, particularly if you're adopting teenagers. That's my controversy for today. I hope that answers your question.